Hello everybody, Andrew Hutchings here, still not a licensed physician, still never giving medical advice, still losing weight or trying to lose weight. And this video is about human development. So recently I was thinking about making a video about how one downside to stem cells, or if you can reprogram your cells to revert to stem cells, is despite the fact that those cells will get the triggers, the chemical messages from neighboring cells that will trigger them to develop, they won't be getting the same sequence of chemical triggers as they would normally have received in the developmental process, which is a process of continuously changing signals. Just because you have cells that have infinite potential doesn't mean they're going to end up doing what you want them to do, because while you can give them the signals to turn into some things that you want them to turn into, sometimes it requires not just a signal, not just a combination of signals, but the right sequence of signals. Like when a fetus is growing, or when you go through childhood or puberty, and when you try to introduce new cells in the adult body, they won't get that sequence, which made me think of something else. And I have made a previous video about how, I don't know if I mentioned that I didn't used to believe in it, but most people would not think of, I'm trying to remember exactly what I talked about in that video. Astrology, that's what it was. Most people would not think of astrology as like a real science thing. Maybe some people give it some credit. And I'm not saying that whatever preconceived notions about astrology that people have come up with, I'm not saying those are correct. But the idea, which is fact, that planetary alignment, star alignment, sun alignment and stuff can influence humans, that's not an idea, that's not theory. They emit particles and wavelengths that do alter the functions of our body. Just like my cell phone is altering the functions of my body right now. Just like the internet waves in my house are altering my bodily functions. Just like the sun's rays are altering my bodily functions. If you don't believe that wavelengths can alter your bodily functions, how do you see things? Wavelengths trigger proteins the same ways that chemicals trigger proteins and get biological responses. But they can also disrupt the functioning of proteins or nucleic acids, whatever in the body. They can alter the workings of it. I'm not saying every single wavelength can alter every single bodily function, but they have potential to alter bodily functions, specific to each wavelength, of course. Just like not one drug does everything. Different molecules elicit different bodily changes, just like different wavelengths are going to elicit and disrupt different bodily changes. So I happen to think about the Zodiac. I'm no expert on it. I know that I'm a Gemini. That's what I know. I know my wife is a Taurus, but that's the extent of my knowledge. For the most, and Gemini means like that's the extent of my knowledge. But there is something to it, and I'm not saying that if you go read about your horoscope or zodiac, whatever, that it's accurate. But the idea that when you were born, depending on where planets and stars and suns were, could affect who you are. That's not an idea, that's a fact. Your exposure to different wavelengths and particles during your most crucial developmental stage in the womb can most certainly, and does most certainly, change who you are. And most likely the exposure during your childhood does to a lesser degree. And just like each year of your life, depending on where the planets and stuff are, your exposure to different waves is going to alter how you are a little bit. Now, of course, when you're in the womb, it's surrounded by fluid and other bodily tissue, so that is going to filter out some of the wavelengths, but most certainly not all of them. Which still gets us to the bottom line of the different wavelengths from different stars, suns, whatever. I think stars are the same as suns, so you don't really need to say both of them. But I'm not a planetary, cosmological, whatever specialist. But I do know that they emit particle waves, and those alter biological functions. And especially your exposure to them during your development is crucial. So it's completely logical, and in my opinion, well, it's not just my opinion, it's factual that depending on your particular exposure, we just don't know what the end, we don't have a good way of measuring it and saying what's going on yet, because it's very complex. It's like we can't say how you're going to turn out depending on every single molecule in your environment when you're growing up. We know that certain molecules do certain things and they will likely lead to certain developmental issues or benefits, but we would need to spend quite a bit of time to experiment and decipher the effects of different wavelengths on the developing human the same way we have done with molecules. And we're still not done figuring it all out with molecules. So the take-home message is the things out in space that emit particle waves do influence us. They do influence our development. And also when using stem cells or reverting your cells into stem cells, they're not necessarily going to fulfill the biological role that you want them to fulfill, because they're not going to be exposed to the right sequence of biological triggers. I hope you like this video. My favorite videos are when I get to tell you something that you can actually do something with and change your life for the better, get more progress in something. But I think these are my second favorite videos, where I talk about things that aren't often talked about and reveal the science behind what are thought to be unscientific things. My website is andrewhutchings.org, where you can hire me for consultations, training consultations, diet consultations, supplement consultations, but no medical consultations. Just remember, it's not a medical consultation though, unless I tell you to do something. If I just give you the information, it's just medical information. And my book is for sale on tendinitis. If you have tendinitis, I don't even need to say why you should get this book. You know that if you could pay $100 and get something that's going to get rid of your tendinitis, it's invaluable. And I'll leave it there because I don't need to try to sell it to you. My Instagram is natural_true_fitness. Not because I'm against altering our biology to benefit us, just because I happen to make that my name, and I built my muscles and physique without chemical or genetic or wavelength enhancement.